Hey there, entrepreneur, and welcome to today's show. You're going to have a good time on this episode, folks, because our guest today is Alex Weber, and he is an international speaker, award-winning entertainer, and my children were very excited to hear this, not going to lie, an American Ninja warrior, positively inspiring millions to achieve breakthrough success. And he recently launched an amazing book that is called Fail Proof: Become the Unstoppable You, which, folks, we're listening to this in the new year, and I know many of you are looking for a great resource to help you through it. So you're going to want to check out that book on Amazon. So Alex, thank you so much for joining me today.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be a good convo. I could tell from doing the research. I just know when I research people and I watch certain videos, I'm like, oh yeah, we'll be fine on this.
Oh, that's awesome. And I know we got the Northeast backgrounds together too. So
I know. Yeah. So let's kick it off. I want you to take us back. Like I was telling you before this, I recently watched your TED Talk about sucking, which bravo, fantastic topic, as well as great delivery. Go Google it, folks, because it's wonderful. In that talk, you brought up a picture of your younger self, bowl cut and all, friends, and you did a beautiful job of explaining the then versus the now. So could you tell us a little bit about that and bring us, through your journey to date?
Yeah, so got to rock the bowl cut. I mean, that's almost, you have to go through a phase at least once of, so I joke with people that I was an accident kid because I was, and so what that meant is that my siblings were much older, and I would often go to their hockey games, lacrosse games, field hockey, whatever my brother and sister were doing, and I would just want to be like them. So lacrosse specifically and hockey, I would go to my brother's games and I would have my little mini stick. And in that photo, I got a Snoopy sweatshirt because you got to rep Snoopy.
It was pretty great. It was pretty great. Yeah.
And, I was just playing. And I think that is really the key that we lose as adults is, not in a corny way of play, but in a real way of just doing and actually having some joy in doing it. Because I remember going to those games and there'd be a whistle and the teams would all go for timeouts, and I would grab a ball that probably I shouldn't have grabbed and run onto the field, which I probably shouldn't have done. And I'd shoot, and because I was just so excited to play the sport that I enjoyed. And, lacrosse that was my first real dream and purpose and goal. And I will say that, I reached some really wonderful highs and some really rough, that broke my heart, lows in it. And if I'm tracing it back, it really was when I lost that sense of play that led to the lower moments.
Yeah. It's interesting. I have a friend, Catherine Price, who just is putting out a book called The Power of Fun. Right. And that, that feeling that you get when you do put play back in the mix, right? And you're not doing something, I am 100% on board with driving for goals, folks. I'm a coach and this is business, but there is that sense of play to be valued too, right?
I 100% agree. And I think this is the biggest, kind of reframe with it. And I only learned it when I was a coach, because when I was playing high school lacrosse, I was so intense. And my high school lacrosse coach was amazing. Paul Carcaterri, he's a legend. But I was really rough on myself, but I still loved the sport. And then when I got to college, that really caught up with me. And I think what I realized when I became a coach was that playing doesn't mean you're not giving a ton of effort. It doesn't mean you're not fully committed. It doesn't mean you want this so dang badly. What it means is that you just still have that joy. Because my background, I think a lot of people's was one where if you're laughing, if you're smiling, it kind of means you're being lazy or you're slacking off.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I coached and we won the championship my first year. I was awarded U.S. Lacrosse Coach of the Year. And really I realized, oh my gosh, when we're having fun, when we're getting loud, when we're getting rowdy, when we're hyping each other up and we're going all out, that's when a lot of good stuff happens.
Yeah. And can we just, I feel like all adults just need to remember that on so many levels. Gosh, because you're exactly right. Like imagine, and also the freedom in that, like you hear a lot about it, like, oh, it didn't feel like work. Like when you're in that kind of sense of flow and fun and stuff, right? So I imagine like that's something that you take into a lot of aspects of your life nowadays. And it yields really great results, right?
It does. And, it's funny because obviously we're not going to enjoy everything. I don't, I'm sure you don't, but like this, for example, I imagine this is fun to some degree
to
do the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm having a blast.
Yeah.
So, so I think also just finding the joy in what we're doing, and that doesn't mean, later on I got to edit a project, and yeah, is that the most fun? No, but it's still overwhelmingly part of something that I love to do, and I think those kind of perspective reframes can really do a lot, because it can be a little eye roll-esque to talk about have to versus get to.
Right.
We
Right.
really do get to do so many wonderful things, and just reframing that a little bit, or finding the moments of what we do like about what we're doing, can mean everything.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. There was a team that I was on years back, and every day we kind of had to come and do the status of like, what were you doing today? What's on your
Sure.
list, right? And after a while, one person interjected with, "No, I get to show up at this meeting, or I get
Yeah.
to do this." And it was amazing to see the like, the domino effect almost, or how
Yeah,
catchy that was. Because then all of a sudden, you're right. It might be a little eye roll worthy, but I'll take it because it's
100%.
it's such a great perspective shift.
It is, and at the end of the day, and I talk a lot in that talk in the book about endure versus embrace.
Yeah.
There's going to be moments that, yes, we're just like, all right, let's just get through this. And of course, we're human. But the more that we can minimize those moments, because if we really just look at it, what are we enduring then? Okay, we're enduring this meeting, we're enduring the morning. Okay, we just got to get through today. We just got to
Yeah.
get through this week. We just
Yeah.
got to get to the month, get to the holiday. There's a hard stop for us all.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
if we're not mindful, we're going to fall into that trap of enduring our lives.
Yeah. And how like scary slash sad slash so many other words that I could put against that, right? Like, I mean, it takes away your intentionality. It takes away your
Yeah.
autonomy over your life if you're just enduring it, right? So you're
Yeah.
just like, to your point, just trying to get to the next marker, right? Whether it's Friday, you hear that a lot in entrepreneurship, like Friday shouldn't be a thing if you're an entrepreneur, whether or not
Sure.
that's correct, who knows?
Yeah.
But, I love the fact that you're saying like this enduring. And at some point as adults, that's like a rule or something. Like we need to shift
Yeah.
from embracing to enduring, which is just silly to me.
Well, entrepreneurship especially, and I can share a little bit about some of the backgrounds, but
Yeah.
I never sought out to do it. And I think the buzz around that title only kind of started after my initiation into
Yeah.
it.
Yep.
But usually I've found if you're going to do entrepreneurship, there has to be something you love about it.
Yeah.
If we're just running from a 9 to 5, yes, that's powerful, but I imagine, and I hope if someone's listening to this and you are doing entrepreneurship, that you love either the business, the product, the craft that you're doing,
Yeah.
or you love the sense of ownership and building a culture and providing for your team and things like that. But just to stay close to those.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like the fact that you said like that if you're just running from a 9 to 5, because I had a
Yeah.
mentor once who said to me when I was in corporate and I was running these like crazy stressful teams and stuff. And I remember her saying like, Michelle, make sure that you're never running away from something. So we were talking about job prospects and maybe looking, and she said, make sure you are always running toward and not away. And that was something that like, I still use that today when it comes to different projects. But to your point, so tell us a little bit more about your jump into entrepreneurship. You've had such a cool ride too, like so many twists and turns. So tell us.
Well, thank you. And you bring up another good point about, the running aspect too, which we can hop into.
Yeah.
Because gosh, we're all go, go, go. Trust me, I'm like, today I've been go, go, go. And I think if there's like a space in my calendar, I'm like, well, I gotta do,
It
something
feels
with
wrong. It feels wrong sometimes.
100%. And I think there's also like a nuance of just being present in present again, not in an eye roll way, but just like being in exactly what we're doing.
Right.
But yeah, so the different chapters, I mean, so my first dream was to play college lacrosse. And I did that. I joke, I was right on that Stifler branding. I was fraternity college lacrosse, 100%.
Yeah, we just dated ourselves right there. I'm sure everyone gets that Stifler reference though, that is listening to this, knowing my demo, but very well put.
And when I was supposed to go into finance, and that was really just because my university was known for it. UPenn has a phenomenal finance program.
Yep.
Everyone on the lacrosse team went into that, all the alumni. So it wasn't the kind of thing where like people joke, like if your friends jumped off a bridge, it was the kind of thing where like all my friends were going into really great jobs. I
Why
just
not?
kind of Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I just knew so deep down that it wasn't right for me. And I remember, gosh, I was working at what is now Morgan Stanley. It was Smith Barney, and I hated it so much that we had the top floor of this office building, and there was in catty corners, there was like an office, like a supply center, Xerox, whatever.
Right.
I would take a huge stack of papers. I'd walk the perimeter to one area and staple it all, and then look really busy and walk the other way and take out the staple and shuffle them up. And I would just
Brilliant.
lapse because I was like, I don't want anyone to tell me to do stuff. I don't want to do anything here. And even knowing that, I still stayed on that path because I was frankly too scared to go off it. And then one night, and this is in the book, I encourage people to just ask themselves, what do you want for your moments on earth?
Yeah.
And I asked myself that question. I just wrote down with brave honesty, which is another thing. We live in a time where it's really tough to take off those blankets of judgment and fear and what ifs. But I was just like, all right, this is my answer. And I wrote it. And next morning I read what I wrote. And that morning I stopped with finance and I started going into entertainment. And that really that was one of the most foundational shifts in my life. And then I've asked that question often and made shifts. And sometimes those are scarier than others.
Yeah.
So I just encourage anyone listening just to ask that question.
Yeah. I mean, and to make the shift into entertainment, been there a little, but not in the level that you have, that is a brave shift in itself, friend. Like that takes a lot of putting yourself out there and a lot of vulnerability and a lot of, a different level, I think, than people realize.
Well, I know that you went through it as well, switching from law or not as primarily focused on that. And it is. And entertainment definitely gives you a tough skin because the amount of rooms that like you walk in and you're like, here's my best. And they're like, not for us.
Exactly.
Like, oh, thanks.
Not best enough, friend, not tall enough, not skinny enough, not big enough, not.
It was just, so I went out and this is just silly. I don't often talk about these, but I think it's kind of funny. I left and I was like, okay, I'm going to be an actor. And really it was only because I didn't even know what entertainment was. And that's the only thing that I could think of.
Yeah. And
it felt like I would walk into all these rooms trying to be someone else. And immediately they were like, terrible, out of here. And I was like, okay, this stings. Okay. And then I found out, which I know this sounds silly, but I found out that hosting was a thing. It's just one of those, and I can't even poke fun at myself because leading up to what I do now, it was only a few years ago that I found out keynote speaking was a career. And so I think things you can have chapters, but hosting was really transformative because it was how you're being right now. It's how I'm being right now. It's how the people listening, it's how you're with your friends or your family. And that once I embraced that path, which was more aligned, it wasn't very long before I got hired by FX and then the Grammys and then NBC American Ninja Warrior.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing is when you're hosting, you are holding so much space, right? Which I'm sure that and there's got to be a love for that, right? Like when you're sitting there and you're like, okay, it's an intimacy too. I think people don't realize, I hear that a lot about podcasting is like, you're coming right into somebody's ears or, right onto somebody's TV. So it takes a slightly different level of confidence versus if you're in an ensemble or a group setting, I would think, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great way of putting it, holding space. And you're right with podcasting. That is a very intimate, you're in the eardrum.
Yeah.
But I really loved doing it. And, Steve Jobs has that great quote of you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. And, what I've also thought is, okay, but what is making the dots? And when that night in college where I asked myself, what do you want for your moments on earth? I wrote down these 3 words and it was everything to me. It was follow your fire. And that asking myself what fires me up and then doing it, it's funny because we all want type A, very evaluated success, right? Measured success. And it can seem like indulging your passion or indulging what fires you up seems a little ethereal or reckless. What I have found is that every success in my life that has ended up as a credential or something that is type A, nailed it, started with what do I want for my moments on earth? Follow your fire and then giving everything I have to it. So I just encourage someone to not get too caught up in the measured analytics
Yeah.
and go to a little bit more of foundational. What is going to activate your best qualities? What do you give a damn about? What do you want to wake up and give yourself to?
Wow. Activate your best qualities. That is a fantastic line right there. And yeah, that's awesome. I think you're exactly right. There's society's definition of success. There's so many different kind of like
Right.
you said, like that type A or that overachieving, run your ass off kind of success
Yeah.
model, right? But I'm always a fan of asking people like, well, what's your definition of success in this chapter of your life?
So good.
Because I imagine it looked a little differently than when you were coming out of college versus maybe now. And like to your point, you're activating different parts of yourself as you're getting older too, right? And more experienced.
I'm going to slow clap that because that hits home for me.
Thanks.
What is your definition of success in this chapter? And I think that is a beautiful question because there really are chapters. And there's definitely some through lines. I'm kind of reflecting now as I'm thinking about that. There's definitely some through lines, but your wants change a little bit. And so some fluidity to that. It's funny. I have a very stark in my mind. I grew up with a very stark, you win or you lose.
Yes. Black and white. Yep.
And to some degree that is correct. I have come from sports and very much that's very tangible. You win or you lose. I also come from stand-up comedy. You get the laugh or you don't get the laugh. It's very tangible and you want to jump, into traffic when you don't get the laugh. Exactly. But it's something where I've learned more and more that it's a trap to only look at the end result. And those are very powerful. They are, because at the end of the quarter, at the end of the relationship, you're either going to feel great or you're not, but there's so much more growth that happens in the doing that leads to those.
Right. And wonderful segue, friend, into failure, by the way. Thank you. You set it up. I'll knock it out. Okay. So, I think that's what you get too, when you're talking about the kind of this black and white thinking of winning and losing. And you're exactly right. They're tangible, like either somebody won 5-0 or they lost on the nothing end. Right. Yeah. But when it comes to things like failure, which, I want you to get into your book and leave enough time for that, there is also black and white thinking, failure bad, success good, right? Yeah. So give me your 2 cents around that whole topic.
Well, okay. So I don't want to fail. That's one of my worst.
Of course not. Who wants to sometimes?
I begin the book with this, my belief that we just have a massively misunderstood as a society belief and understanding of what failing is. Yes. Failure means it's done. If you stop doing something, then yes, you failed. It's a failure. Yep. It's over. But if you fail becomes failing, which is forward momentum. That's progress. That's growth. You're getting there. And I think, so often we will attempt to do something and it doesn't go great. And so we start to adopt what I call dangerous lies that we're not capable of doing this thing. So maybe someone listening, if it's, you're not great with numbers, or you're not great with public speaking, or you're not that funny, or you're not athletic, or you're not worthy of love, whatever it might be, maybe a relationship told you that, maybe you spoke in front of people one time and it didn't go great, or every time it, isn't going great right now, but that doesn't mean that you can't do it. And that was my biggest learning with American Ninja Warrior, is that everything is learnable. You just have to be willing to go through this period of failing.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you just said, the distinction between failure and failing is kind of like the I am versus I am, the other thing, like Brene Brown speaks a lot about like the shame aspect of like, I did that wrong versus I am wrong. Right. So like when you said like that failure, like I'm a failure, gosh, you hear that a lot. And it's like, you didn't even give yourself enough runway to own that title. Like, that's what I want to say to some folks, to be like, what like gives you the social proof that you can own a whole title around being a failure? Like not just like one instance, but like you just labeled yourself that, just the same as I would label myself a coach, or you would label yourself a television host, like same thing, but that's a pretty big weight to wear.
It is. And it's funny, this phrase, and it was from a lacrosse player who I just saw a game, and he was like, it's a volume game. And what he means by that, and what, Steph Curry and what Wayne Gretzky, when he says we miss 100% of the shots you don't take, is you got to shoot.
Yeah.
You got to shoot.
Yeah.
You're not going to score. You're not going to win if you don't shoot. But the thing is one, not letting your misses get to you too much. I mean, they can get to you and they can fire you up. And trust me, I have a lot that have. But to not focus our time and energy on dwelling on those. And really the quickest hack into that is what I've, found with American Ninja Warrior, just because I was failing so often when I was getting into it, was that there is a system. And most people, the first thing that happens anytime we fail or hit a setback or adversity, whether you miss a deal or you get shut down by someone you asked on a date or whatever it might be, you go to do a workout class, you ended up running a 45-minute mile, whatever it might be, we have an emotional reaction. And for a lot of people, I've spoken and worked with thousands of people, a lot of people, that emotional reaction is too much to handle. And so they either stop, or what I found to be the most common is quiet disengagement, just backing away a little bit, avoiding opportunities, being a little more hesitant if we do that. And that is what's more common and dangerous. So if we can just acknowledge that these waves are going to come and go, John Kabat-Zinn, mindfulness expert, can't stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf.
Exactly.
If we just acknowledge that those are going to come and go, feel it and use it, but then move forward, that will change everything.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know how much you know about our kind of definition of resilience here in this podcast, but it is embracing the spectrum of emotions that comes with a situation and still moving forward versus the dictionaries, bounce back and you're good. Because the emotions are inevitable, right? And at some point in time, we voted off like the quote unquote bad emotions off the island, right? And we decided, oh my God, we feel sad, we feel uncomfortable, something must be wrong with us. But to your point, if you fail, you are going to take that. But then how do you personally use that and channel it into the next step? Because I've heard a lot of different versions from folks on how they kind of channel that failure.
Yeah, well, I mean, what's going on in my head is just a flashback of fails.
It's like the failure reel. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. There's a ton. And these happen. Okay, so I'm thinking of three specific ones. One is, American Ninja Warrior. This season, I did the best I'd ever done. And my express route journey in American Ninja Warrior was I started as a host, NBC American Ninja Warrior host, with my job being to try these obstacles and fail for everyone's entertainment. But then season 2, the idea was that maybe I would get good at this. So I basically had to get good at these impossible obstacles with my dream job in the balance. Literally, I remember being on the course, doing my hosting spiel. Hey, we're here in Atlanta. And then getting up on the obstacles with hundreds of people around, the athletes, the producers, the creators, the audience, failing. And the first season that was applauded. The second season, I was supposed to be doing better. And I would go back to the hotel and I'd be so scared that I was going to get fired.
Yeah.
So that's what lit the fire in me to then fall, which led me to ultimately get through obstacles. We won best series that I hosted, and it led me to compete on American Ninja Warrior. So I say all that express background of my journey with American Ninja Warrior. It's been filled with fail moments.
Yeah.
Ultimately, and this is just the hard or the beautiful truth, depending on how you look at it, no matter what has happened, no matter what event has happened or what you've done or what any people have done, you have a choice. Fork in the road, binary, 1-0, black, white. You are either going to commit and keep going, or you're going to quit and back away. That's it. How we do it, why we do it, when we do it is up to us. But that is a stark choice, and the choice that will always be in your control. So if someone dumped you, if you lost that deal, if you're just not feeling like the version of you that you want to be right now, okay, beautiful. Do you want to commit to you or to quit and back away? And then the last thing I'll say, because we can unpack how you go about that, but when that choice, ultimately, you're either quitting on yourself,
right,
or committing to yourself. And when life quiets down finally, and it's at night and it's dark and you're going to bed, you're going to have that truth that you either quit on yourself or you committed to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the fact that you said to yourself, because I think that's often a point that is overlooked in this kind of just do it type of mentality. Right. And it's like, I've always been a big fan of, I just want to be okay with me when I lay my head on the pillow, like with what you just described at night, good, bad, whatever it may be for all of my decisions. But, sometimes that I failed myself is sometimes worse than let me back up for a second. That was one big mind fuck on season 1 plus season 2 for you. I can imagine like you're like, let me fail, fail, fail. Yes, good TV. And now I have to win. Like, holy crap.
Yeah.
But also, to be able to have kind of that light bulb moment of like, okay, I do have a choice, because there is always a choice, even when it's not a physical action. It's a choice of mentality, to your point. And I love the fact that you bring it back around to what you can live with as a human being.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it goes to that question of what do you want for your moments on earth? And gosh, it's just such a noisy and hectic and confusing time right now.
Yeah.
To be a human, to be aspirational, to want to be your best self. And if we just stay true to that, I think a lot of good will come that we can't predict just yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And good that's kind of rooted in your soul, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
not externally motivated per se, right? Because you can have a lot of external motivation, but at the end of the day, if you don't have the internal or the
Yes.
why, or whatever you want to call it, you're really not going to get you'll get far, but you may not fulfill your true potential, which is unmet potential is horrible.
That's one of my greatest fears right now too, is and it's something that I'll be very real. Like, it keeps me up at night thinking, like, is there more that I'm supposed to do in my time here? And it's finding, it's what we were talking about running towards while also being in the present moment.
Yeah.
Because it's a beautiful, I'm grateful that exists, even though it scares me.
Yeah.
But it does come back to, okay, well, what can we do in this moment? Because we can't solve it all. We can't do it all right now.
No, but you're exactly right. And I mean, I'm gonna go quote like Frozen 2, but like, what's your next best thing, right? Or your next right thing, right? Like, I mean, that's all that you can do, is kind of, or one foot in front of the other, however you want to do it. But at least you're continuously moving, because I'm a big believer of once you stop moving, you're dead, right? Like, then you are at the failure versus failing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. And I'm curious with, so, well, two things, but one is, how you encourage people with, because why is such a trendy.
It is. Find your big why. Yeah.
Yeah. And Simon Sinek and it matters. It right. I'm just curious because I've found, in my own journey, that if it's like, okay, why? I think with American Ninja Warrior, when I really wanted to get good at it the first time, okay, why? Well, I need to for my job. Okay, but why? Well, this is actually my dream job. This is something that I love so much. It pushes me to do things that, I didn't think I could do. And then I realized my why is that I don't want this version of me to die. I want this. I love being this Alex. It's a version of me that I didn't really think that I could be. And so in a very real way, I was fighting for my life. And then if you got that beating inside you, I'll go drive an hour and train for 4 hours. Yeah, no doubt. It's a lot it's a lot smoother to go and do the tough stuff when we know what it means.
Yeah. And what's at stake.
Yes.
Right. I think sometimes we just kind of passively allow ourselves to be taken over, or to release ownership of our paths, right? Either we just don't think it. It's amazing to me how many adults I come into contact with that I'll say, well, what brings you joy? Or what do you want? And the blank stares. And I've done it myself. So I'm not faulting them for that, because I've been that person. But, to remember that you have the autonomy, and that actually sometimes you just got to fight for it, for your own self. And if you can't do it for yourself, find the next best thing or something, if you're not capable of doing it for yourself. You don't have the tools, right?
I love that. I love that you use the word fight, because I think there is, and there's a beautiful sentiment to love and peace, but when you really start learning about what those qualities are, you do need to fight. Like, you need to be a loving fighter. You need to be a fighter that fights for peace. So I say all that to say, like, that quality of us all tapping into like the fight in us, that's beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, and I see it a lot in my own life, because I'm a mom of 2, and I work and I'm a wife and I'm a lot of the labels, right? So there are times and have been chapters where I felt like, okay, you want to maintain your sense of self, you better fight like hell. And some people may say, well, you shouldn't have to fight to maintain yourself, but sometimes you just do.
Yeah.
You need to,
Yeah.
right? Like you just described with doing the drive and everything. There has to be
Yeah.
that level of a why.
Well, you said fight to maintain your sense of self.
Yeah.
I love that. Do you find that you need to what's your best tactic for fighting for your sense of self?
So believe it or not, I mean, it's not an aggressive thing, but it is allowing space and quiet.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. I mean, maybe that is aggressive. Maybe that is an aggressive tactic, especially when we're in this go, go, go society. But if I am in a season of life where I don't have at least, I don't know, 15 non-negotiable minutes for me just to hear myself think,
Hmm.
then there is a chance that I'm not living in my integrity and my values because I can't
Yeah.
hear it. Right. It gets drowned out so quickly.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, especially now, right? It's these are the best and the worst things.
The phones. Yeah.
So
Yes, they are, friend. Yes, they are. Let me scroll to numb or scroll for information or scroll for
yes,
validation. I'm sure it's listening right now anyway, so it's cool.
100%.
So I mean, for our newbies, our newer entrepreneurs that are listening, once they hit that first fail, that one, I feel like your first failure, especially in business, stings the most. Maybe. I don't know. I'm just generalizing, but
Yeah, it can,
yeah.
but it also doesn't have to. It depends.
Right.
That I think the volume of what we set that decibel to is up to us. So
Yeah.
some are going to hurt more than others. I mean, I don't know how else to say it except that I've had some that really have hurt. And I've learned more, especially in the last 2 years, that because I do come from a background of just like suck it up and do it.
Yeah, me
Lock it
too.
up,
Me
tighten it
too.
up,
Yep,
Of
exactly.
course, Northeast, there you
No
go.
crying in this, get it done.
Yes.
Yep, toughen up.
And
Yep.
and there is a time and a place for that. Yes. But there's also a time and a place to say, all right, that really upset me, and to deal with it.
Yes.
And to whether that's
Yes.
crying, whether that's punching, whether that's punching a pillow, whatever, or screaming,
Not
or
a
punching
person,
a
folks.
punch
We're not that
bag.
kind of a show.
Yeah.
Not a person.
Yeah.
That's mean.
Whatever it might be, because I've just found in my own life that if I don't really deal with it in some way and get it out of me, one, it lingers a whole lot longer.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And two, it pops out. It's that funny scene in a lot of movies where there's a leak in the wall and you try to put a gum on it and then it pops out something else.
Yeah,
so
the
it's
dam breaks. Yeah.
out. Entrepreneurs, we got a lot of like go in us. It's gonna pop out in a bad way, in a way that harms us unless we just dive in and deal with it. So that's but I'll also say if the fail becomes a failure when you stop. I think about Don't Tell Comedy. So I'm a partner. I was a part of the founding of with Kyle K.A. of Don't Tell Comedy. When I was doing a ton of stand-up comedy, Kyle and I and two other people, Sean and Anna, we would see that there was, I was also doing hosting for these secret music shows, which were So Far sounds amazing. And they do secret music
I know
shows.
what that is. I know what So Far is. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was hosting, I probably hosted 100, 150 shows in a year, like a ton. And we were kind of like, why doesn't this exist for comedy? So Far couldn't really do it because they weren't comics. And comedy is a unique community. It's a unique art form. It needs to be curated in a great way. It's more interactive than music.
Yeah.
So we basically put on secret shows in LA. The first show, we asked our friends to come. We couldn't pay them to come in a backyard. Couldn't pay them to come. That was a fail, right? In some ways, it was also, well, we did it. We did our first one. So that's the perspective of how are you viewing this event that you did? Now, we could have most definitely said, there's nothing here. But we were like, let's do it again. And we started to notice that a couple friends started asking. Fast forward, we did a few more shows. Now we'd have to block people out. So we started charging for tickets. Then people in San Francisco asked about it. So we drove up and we did one. And it went okay. It didn't go great. And we could have said, you know what, maybe this should just exist in LA. It's just an LA thing. But we decided to give it another crack in San Francisco, driving up 5 hours and sleeping on couches and doing it the entrepreneur way. Fast forward 3 years, we're in 40 cities. Wow. We sell out every show. We've gone to London. We've had, you name the comedians, Tom Segura, Ali Wong. We've done comedy specials, and we're the largest live comedy producer in America. So why I say that, and I need to just give Kyle K.A. so much love for what he's doing with Don't Tell Comedy. It's, if we view the setbacks, there's value in them. If
Yes.
you're pissed off, be pissed off. If there's something to learn it, and then keep going. But don't let that pissed off emotion, that frustrated emotion, that heartbreak derail you so much that you don't get back to it, or derail you to the point where you don't learn from what went wrong and you just keep doing it.
Yeah.
But if we learn and we keep committed, I just like this visual of the graph, like you're going to go up one, over one, up one, over one, up one, over one, and you will freaking get there.
Yeah, especially because I think people underestimate the endurance factor, right? Like statistically speaking, you're going to get there if you don't quit, right? Like, I mean, and that's a big part of it. And I think like what you said too is what was your measure of success for those shows, right? Like you said, you could have easily just been like, oh, nobody showed, that's bad, right? But the measure was you can change your success metric even if it's after the fact.
Yes. 100%, and to try things. And I think that is, in our world of how many likes and how many people bought it and how many, everything's just so dang measured that it can be tough to try things. Just try it and maybe try a few things at once. And, there's no harm in just throwing it at the whiteboard and seeing what sticks.
Right. Especially, I mean, I hear people say, well, what if you lose money? That's my usual, like, I hear people say that to me back, but I'm like, just try it. And I'm like, well, then I ask like, well, what are we talking? Like, you know what I mean? And also, I'm sorry, but sometimes it requires an investment, and it requires an investment of time and money, the two biggest commodities, right? Yeah. And what are you willing to lose if you don't try it?
Love that. Yeah, 100%. And, I've probably had, I would say 3, I would say painful, and as I say that word, we can unpack that word, but investments into business, into myself, into career that didn't really pan out like what I thought. Now, that money's gone.
Yeah.
You'll hear a lot of really successful people be like, okay, well, you paid tuition on that. And that's true.
It's a good way to put it, yeah.
It is. But it's only tuition if I actually learn something. And, I think one thing that I've learned is trying to find this gentle, and this, maybe just for me, but I imagine someone listening may resonate with this, is finding that gentle balance of teaming with people has been the greatest X factor to getting to goals. Yeah. And sometimes teaming with people where, it's not my skill set. So let me hire someone, let me work with someone.
Right.
But also knowing that just like everything in life, there's people who give good haircuts and bad haircuts. There's phenomenal doctors. There's not phenomenal doctors. And I have a personal story with that. Yeah. But there are phenomenal people and not phenomenal people to team up with. And just because someone has a price tag or a fancy title doesn't mean they're the best. So do some due diligence when teaming up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm a coach. I hear that all the time, right? Yeah. Like that people are asking for, thousands upon thousands of dollars, and then people think they're getting X results, and then they don't, right? So it's, I think but that's the way of the world. Everything's kind of on a scale, right? Yes. Like you owe it to yourself to do that due diligence, because if you are focused on, especially if you're focused on like, am I failing? Am I not failing? Then if you didn't do your due diligence, then you can point right there and say, maybe that's where I fell short in achieving this, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's so true. And that goes to, again, like if we're looking at our lessons, I think about one where I basically invested in this company to make a course for me. And I basically, if I'm looking at it, I trusted in them too much. And because the skill sets that I ended up paying for were ones that I already have. I came from production. I had a production company. Yeah. So for them to set up cameras and edit something, I was like, hold on here. We have massively done this here. Yeah. So I just say that to say my learning then is clearer communications, clearer expectations, clearer roles of duties. So in the fails, we have to, I call them golden nuggets, because sometimes we got to go mine for them and find it. And or else if we don't, I like this visual of you went out into the West, you went, into the river, you got dirty, you got muddy, and then you found a golden nugget and you just threw it back. We have to go and harvest those golden nuggets that we earned through the fails.
Yeah. And then you have a choice. Once you find the nugget, what the hell you do with it, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is a fantastic conversation. I swear I could talk to you all day. But give us your last golden nugget, friend, about, failure for those people listening, maybe something you haven't touched upon or regarding resilience or anything that you want to leave us with.
I appreciate that. I'll just say that. So 2020 really rocked me. I'm
Yeah.
sure it rocked a lot of people in a few different ways. It rocked me professionally. It also rocked me in the American Ninja Warrior. I broke my hand. My mom got sick. I went through a really tough breakup with someone I thought we were going to get married.
Wow.
So it's kind of like those jokes, like put it on my tab.
Yep.
But at the end of 2020, I had a moment, and what it led me to were really beautiful things that would not have happened. One of them is I run a men's community, which we support high achieving men to achieve our goals. And
Nice.
it's called Men We Admire. And it's been one of the greatest gifts to my life. And it led to the book. And so I say that because a fail only becomes a failure when you stop. Like,
Yes.
even if it's rough, even if that relationship ended, or you missed the deal, or you're just looking in the mirror and you're like, I thought we'd be a little different by now. Don't give up on it.
Yeah.
Keep going, find the golden nuggets, and you will get to where you want to go.
Yeah. Don't let it become a label. Just let it become an ever evolving thing. Right.
Yes.
Yeah. I love it. Oh, the topic of failure is one that is like near and dear to my heart on so many
I love
levels,
that.
because it's so
Yeah.
misunderstood and people beat themselves up about it. And there's a lot of shame attached to it. So let's denounce that crap right now.
I love it. Yeah.
So, well, tell people where they can find you so they can also buy the book and do all the good things with you, especially if our male listeners are listening. Please go find his program as well, because I can imagine that is benefiting a lot of lives.
It's been beautiful. So, my name's Alex Weber with 1B. The book is Fail Proof. It's on Amazon and where books are sold. And please do reach out to me if you get it, because we have these kind of communities that we support each other, specifically the men's group. And, I just, if that resonates with anybody, just reach out and we'll get you in a group, because it's been a savior in my own life. It's called Men We Admire. And
It's awesome.
yeah, I just appreciate you having me, Michelle.
Yeah, of course. And your website is I am Alex Weber, right?
Yeah,
I
I'm
remember
Alex
because
Weber.
it was so unique. And I was like, well played, friend, on your like social tags and everything. I was like, good job. Good. The brander in me was like, nice job, dude.
Oh, really? Oh, that's good to hear. Okay, good.
But all right. Well, thank you so much for being with me here today, Alex. This was a joy.
Thank you so much.